Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good morning, depending from where you are. My name is Peter Petros. I'm CEO and founder of Petco, and I welcome you to today's webinar on supplier management. We have an audience from all over Europe, from Ukraine to Germany, Switzerland, France, and several other countries, and I'm looking forward to talk about supplier management. It will be a condensed webinar, 30 minutes. I'm well prepared. Please, if you have some questions, just write it in the chat box or in the question box, and then we will go on that. I reserved about 10 minutes at the end for discussions and questions, and I'm looking forward to a fruitful discussion. This webinar is recorded and will be provided to all people which have registered for that meeting, and maybe it will also be provided for a larger audience in the future. So let's start about, I will turn off the camera right now because yeah. So let's start about supplier management and why it is important. And I'm sure you all heard about why we think stories where there was a scandal with suppliers. We have several issues, and I just typed into Google supplier scandal in technology areas, and we see it's worldwide. Dell suppliers, laborers, Apple, Volkswagen, diesel scandal, Russell Home, and there are just 10,300,000 results on these stories. We have seen about Cambridge Analytica, that company went bankrupt now. We had the Albra and the Apple scandal. There was the diesel engine of Volkswagen, shocks in the stock exchange for several companies after these scandals came in, Samsung, and it's going on and on and on. And it's all about supplier management, treating people, having contracts in place and working together. So we are talking about supplier management today, but first we would like, or we may have to answer, what is a supplier? And of course, we have our all-time classic, Mr. Deming, my favorite in quality. And he said this is a long-term relationship between purchaser, a company, and a supplier, which is necessary to achieve the best economy. And it's a collaboration. And if you look at a supplier, then it's usually either an internal or an external organization which develops or deliver components, systems, or subsystems. And they provide unique competencies and distinctive skills. So it can also be a consulting company helping to transform a company towards digitalization. So they provide expertise that can accelerate and or even reduce the cost for a solution delivery. And they have their own development and delivery methods. And of course, they're a company for themselves. So they have their independent mission and solutions to deliver to their clients, and also their own economic framework. On the other side, the lean agile enterprise takes a different view that maintains, just sorry about that. The lean agile enterprise takes a different view that one that maintains a longer term economic perspective via collaborative, ongoing and trusted relationship with suppliers. They become an extension of the culture and ethos of the enterprise. They are also treated as true partners, and they actively help the suppliers to adopt lean agile mindsets and practices to increase the economic benefit for both parties. Now, we all know, if you look at the scaled agile framework, that there is one gray bar which is called the supplier in large solution. And I had in the past discussions, we need to have the large solution level because we have suppliers. And of course, this is just a simplification for purpose of a big picture, because collaboration with suppliers occurs at all levels of safe, It includes strategic themes. For example, Honda collaborates with its suppliers on the kinds of products and types of markets it plans to pursue for the coming years. And this creates better alignment and enables their suppliers to offer better value through more strategic offerings instead of just hiding information from the suppliers. Honda shares it for examples for better economic outcomes. Suppliers also collaborate in building the requirements, and they are trying to avoid over-specification, which really would inhibits decentralized decisions. And this is really something that is key in scaled agility, and handcuff them to so that they can't be really innovative. Instead of handing suppliers detailed specification, suppliers must be included in the system specification process, and we need to strive to keep options open and explore alternatives, which we do when we are using set-based design, for example. Solution management works with suppliers continuously and collaboratively to write capabilities and then decompose them into features and capabilities and so forth. To enable and the orgs that share the interfaces, their test environments, simulators, and other infrastructure to enable early integration and improve quality. And all those interfaces which are defined there, they should and will be documented in the solution intent so that information is available to everyone. This is really key in the scaled agile framework. And many organizations, they delegate supplier selection and contracting to a separate procurement organization. And this can really lead to an emphasis on near-term pricing without a complete understanding of overall value and longer-term economics. And there are some other anti-patterns as well. So in the name of competition, organizations may switch suppliers, searching just for the lowest price, and the resource suppliers across the globe in the most economical cost venue. So one year it's in China, next year it's in Vietnam. And these suppliers are typically told what to build through detailed specification instead of asking what solution they could offer that provides the most value. And some organizations magnify this problem by isolating suppliers and only provide information on a need-to-know basis. And finally, the contract structures can limit a supplier's ability to adopt and committing them too early to a set of predetermined goals. So strategic suppliers are selected based on their alignments on multiple dimensions. For example, the right technical and business model fit with the overall solution, that they have a development model which is consistent with the buyer's way of working. So if your company wants to work agile and wants to work with SAFe, your supplier usually should be in the way of an agile working as well. And of course, the culture should be the same. It should be aligned with the buyer's purpose, and it should be the same for the future as well. When we talk about working with suppliers, then we can have both possibilities. Either we work with lean agile suppliers or we work with traditional methodologies. And if we involve lean agile suppliers, it's, let's say, from SAFe perspective, the easier case. If we want as a lean agile enterprise to work with SAFe, then the working models and the expectations are largely the same, and the practices which we are using are more or less the same, and we can assume that they're the same, and we can extend them together. And in such a scenario, the supplier is treated like an agile release stream, for example, and they work in the same cadence as other arts in your company do as well. They participate in the PI planning, pre and post PI plannings, and there are also demoing their subsystems in the system demo, in the solution demo, and continually integrate their work. So more or less, you don't see any differences. they participate also in inspect and adopt, just to make sure that we improve the whole value stream, and that we help them to improve their lean agile practices, which are really in reliance with us. In traditional suppliers, they expect different things. They expect that you have formal requirements and specification, that you have upfront design very early in time, and they need it very early in the PIs so that they are able to build their plans and to establish milestones. And they maybe are not able to deliver incrementally. If you want them to integrate frequently, this might be very challenging for them and for you, of course, as well. And the changes to requirements and designs need really to be understood. They will work with change requests, and the response time to changes will take much more time. And with that, we will need a lot of time for architecture, to define an architecture, and we'll need to have to establish the practices of lean cycle interoperability. We had a separate webinar on that, so I'm not talking about coexisting of life cycles, but these are exactly the practices which we would need here. In supplier management, in SAFE, we are talking about agile contracts. And if you look at how we can do contract management, there are very different approaches to contracting. On the left side, we have the classical thing, which is called fixed price, with fixed specification, fixed price and date. Risk goes to the supplier. Every change is a fee, and this is typically the iron triangle, where we have requirements, cost, and schedules fixed, and we see in that product. And this is also providing an opportunity for the competitive bids. You can go for the small prices, but it assumes that everything is well understood far in advance. And this is in these days not true anymore. And in order to have such a fixed offer, you need to have a lot of decisions taken very early. So a lot of options can't be taken anymore. And as soon as you start, they want to deliver, suppliers want to deliver their solution on the smallest amount of money possible, and the customer wants to have the most value in that contract out of it. So they're really opposing economic interests. While on the other side, on the right, we have time and materials contracts. And in some companies' understanding, some people understandings, they think that this is agile. We just have time and material contracts. We say the color and the tools, the people, the machinery, which we will, and this appears to be extremely agile, but at the end, it's all based on trust. So this and based on trust only, and this may drag contracts out for longer than necessary, and it's not clear on what to measure success. For example, just you asked for 50 people for 1 year, you got 50 people, so this is success. And this is not what we mean with time and material. And in SAFE, there's something in between, and it's called the SAFE Managed Investment Contracts. It's a pre-commitment with shared responsibilities. And prior to engage in any significant investments, some due diligence is required. So the customer and the supplier on the left and the right, they work together to come to terms on the basis of a contract. So they agree on specific measures, and they continuously look for objective evidence so that they are still fit to use those things. And they establish an economic framework, which includes trade-off parameters. And what the customer says basically is, hey, if we work on these initial vision and the roadmap, on the solution intent, which we have initially fixed, and on our framework, if you work on that, I can promise you that for the next 2-3 PIs, I will fund those people. And the supplier just commits to such a contract model, and then have the resources available, and then they start to work on that contract. While we are executing now, then we have these activities, and something that we do first. When we do it the first time, we have the so-called the PI preparation. So we Both suppliers and customer will invest some time and effort in preparing content and logistic for the first PI planning sessions. Then we do the PI planning, and the first PI planning event influences the entire program. So customer and supplier stakeholders plan the first PI really in details, in iteration level detail. Then it comes to the PI execution, and depending on the context, the customers participate at various levels in iteration execution. At the minimum, direct customer engagement is usually required for each system demo. For larger solutions, the multiplicity of system demos may be released by a more fully integrated solution demo, which can occur more frequently than at the PI boundaries. And then at the end, we have an evaluation, and at each PI marks, we have a critical milestone for both the customer and the supplier, and there we compile the measures, analyze them, and take decisions for the next PI. So this is exactly what we are doing. And now if we are talking about supplier management in regulated environments. And so what do we really need? And here we're talking in general first that what these reference models usually want, FDA, CMMI, automotive SMICE, they all want to see the same, that you somehow know how you work, that you have a managed process and an established QMS, that you have transparency in the execution and continuous compliance, that you have effective processes, that you manage your process variations and really reduce them to really what you're doing, that you have traceability in place, and also verification validation based on engineering principles and practices. So this is a general requirements, which is true for all the regulated environments. And now I would like to show you some of the details if we deal with suppliers in a regulated environment. And the first thing I also would like to show you is the Food and Drug Agency, CFR Chapter 11, Title 21. We are talking here about the general requirements to supply chain program. And it says using approved suppliers and sampling and testing raw material of ingredients and document supplier verification activities as required, conduct supplier verification. So this is very strict and very detailed what we need to do. If you look at the ASPICE model, which is mostly used in the automotive industry, there's almost a third of the regulations are in regards to acquisition and supplier management. And I will stay in that detail here. If you go into supplier monitor, we see what is all requested. Agree and maintain joint process, exchange agreed information, process innovation, process optimization. So all we talked before in SAFE, we see here again. The same is true for CMMI. CMMI has various chapters. One of them is supplier agreement management. And if you go on that, we see that it also talks about establishing supplier agreements, satisfy agreements, institutionalize a defined process. And if you look at establishing a defined process, it talks about that we select from the organizational standard processes. Those are processes which really cover the needs of the specific endeavors. CMMI talks about projects, but if you talk about programs, teams, large solution or portfolios, then it's the same. We need to establish the process defined. This is also said in SAFE, and document the defined process and record the tailoring. That's all what we need to do for CMMI. And there is where our product applied SAFE comes in place. This is a customizable implementation of SAFE as a process model, and it helps to implement SAFE fast and precise because it has role defines, process defined, tailoring defines, and you can customize each program, each large solution exactly to what it is needed. You can extend it with your own milestones and work products. You can ensure compliance. I will show that in a minute. And of course, the relentless improvement is implemented there as well. So let's look at the process as it is defined in applied SAFE. And we see here that we are in a large solution, and we see a process supplier element. And we see that we have defined two ways of working. We can say we initiate a supplier management, and then we look, how do we work together? Is it in a traditional way or is it in an agile way? And depending on the way, it has different steps to do. And this is also something that we have a responsible role for. And this is the supply management. And the process is defined to be used on all levels. So in Applied Safe, we can use parts or the whole thing of it on enterprise, portfolio, large solution, program, and team, because that is necessary. You can have suppliers on all levels. And if you have it on all levels, they will be different. So it's really key that you tailor them, for instance, that programs which are not working with suppliers, that they don't have any supply process in their divisions at all. And that we can reflect different usage scenarios. And that if we work with Agile contracts, that we have that in, and also the specific rules. If you don't need it, we have to the traditional contracts, and that we can show that we are compliant, and this can be achieved for each endeavor, and we can prove it. Now, let's look at some of the activities of the process, and we see, for example, here, evaluate a PI in the Agile branch of the supplier management, and we see that we agree on metrics which are compiled and analyzed, and by do that for each step as well. And we see also that we have some products, work products defined. So we have solution, PI milestones, the agreement. This is all taken into the consideration for an evaluation, and the output is that we have the roadmap, the solution intent, and the backlog updated or evaluated as well. So this is also something done which we do together with the defined roles in Applied Safe. Now, we talked about automotive spice before, and we just want to show you how that looks like if you take reference models from automotive spice. And here we are deep in the details of acquisition. We are in acquisition 4, supplier monitoring, and we just selected exchange all agreed information here. And this is the information which we have based on the in the automotive spice. And what we see here on the right lower side is which activities, which milestones, which processes, which work products, and this is just an excerpt, are really fulfilling all those requirements. And of course, the reference model helps us also to ensure that we identify a gap and that we ensure that we are really compliant. If we would take away some of these processes, we would see that we would violate the acquisition process as well. So this is all I wanted to show you, and now I would like to talk about some experience, and we need to consider special things for regulated environments. One important key for me is that we need to use supply management where needed, and it really shall be out if it's where it is not necessary. We have seen that the mapping of the scaled agile supplier management to the reference models is surprisingly straightforward once we have understood what is written in the scaled agile framework. Sometimes the reference models, they ask for strange things, and it's really key. It's a bear trap if you say, okay, just build something in, even if you don't understand it in our process. Don't fall into that peer trap. Just map compliance elements which are really adding value. We have automation mechanisms to prove mapping to reference models, and with that we can reduce the discussion time and interpretation games. And some of the reference models, they ask for process and product specific requirements. So for example, the functional safety, ISO 26262. Some of the requirements are for the product itself, and some of the requirements are for the process itself. And you need to use the existing processes and practices. Processes need to be tailored to reflect the reality in the endeavors. And if you talk with a stakeholder, but also with the appraisers, don't forget that they all have a background, that they all have a history, and really think about what they do. We have seen that the solution intent and agile design control needs really to be established, and these are the real practices which we are needing. And of course, as it is already said in SAFe, the compliance shall be demonstrated in small iterations based on flow. So we are not doing it just at the very end of each endeavor, just before final releasing of a product. We just treat it like a normal system demo. And if there are some outcomes, we just focus on the outcomes and don't talk about or finger pointing who has done an error or not. You're not alone by doing that. There are several very good reads to do that. There is from the Software Engineering Institute, an article about scaling agile methods for the Department of Defense program. We have also something from the CMMI Institute, a guide to Scrum and CMMI. And our most favorite paper, this is also one of the authors is in our advisory board, Dr. Jochen Jäger. This is the Tier 45 paper from the AAMI, which talks about agile practice in the development of medical device software. If we can do that, we can do everything, because that is really the toughest. Okay, this is my last slide now. Lean Agile Supply Management can be successfully applied in regulated environments. The definitions in SAFe, they have the hooks which we need for compliance. We need to read and understand the regulation. We need to strive to map existing behavior and don't impose unnecessary work. And this is an agile principle as well. We need to see that all regulated requirements have more or less the same common backgrounds, and regulations never tell you how you should do something. They just tell you what to do. And you can use this freedom and map the agile practices such as agile contracting, solution intent, and so forth, which we see on the right side. Then we need to have a QMS in place. So we need to address lifecycle concerns of solutions. For example, the life cycle. If we have traditional suppliers, we need to have these practices in place for interoperability of life cycles. And we need to include the execution level in the cultural change as well. And of course, talk about our experience with others, because there are not so many people really deeply experienced in that way. And we would like to learn from each other, and together we will grow in this area. This is the positive end of my speech. So I'm open for questions or suggestions. So please, if you have questions, or type it in the chat or in the questions. There's one question from the Ukraine, and I see that is no, it's not Ukraine, sorry. And I see that how much time it takes usually to map a supplier management process. In our experience, this is more or less to be done in 2 to 4 weeks work of time, depending on the reference model, if it's defined, and how far your processes are from the scaled agile framework. But this is something that we usually can support quite well. I see that the time of 30 minutes has been up, and I would like to keep in the time. So please send me an email to peter.pedros@petco.eu if you have questions. You see it also in my slide deck here, the things to write to, or Ms. Renata Sander will answer as well. Then you will find a PDF of this presentation also in the resources of this webinar. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and looking forward to see you at the next webinar, at the presentation of Applied SAFe, or at the SAFe Summit, or at the Agile in Hardware in Frankfurt at the end of September. Wishing you a nice day. Bye-bye.